In today's subscriber story, the crazy math teacher gets caught by a student doing, well, I'm not going to spoil it. Enjoy the story. So the subscriber who sent this in was in a math class, and the teacher who, was the teacher of the math class, her name was, let's call her Miss Davenport, right? Don't want to actually use the real names here. By the way, if you want to send in a story, Instagram's in the description. Anyways, right, this was a math class that was pretty difficult in general. It was like an advanced or like an accelerated math class. So it was already at first like pretty difficult, but Miss Davenport was new to the school, so people didn't really know like what her reputation was, how she was going to teach, how difficult she was going to be, but she was incredibly brutal. So, on the first day, some teachers will be like, welcome to the class, this is what we're going to do, and kind of just have like try and have a good first impression. Well, Miss Davenport was new to the school, so she was really, this was really her first impression, like everyone's first impression of her. And in the first day of class, she was like, most of you will not succeed in this class. That was like her ominous tale in the beginning. Like a lot of teachers will be like, so this is what we're going over. My office hours or whenever. Feel free to reach out to me. Nah, bro. She was like, most of you will not succeed. So everyone in the class was like, okay. So 3 weeks into the school year is their first official test. And the test is 45 minutes because the class period is 45 minutes. And it was on the first unit, which was somewhat review, but there was some new stuff. And they just, they knew it was the accelerated class, so they expected the test to be pretty difficult. Subscriber and his classmates, they were in class, they were sitting there, they were waiting, right? They get there 5 minutes early to prepare. And people are kind of talking to each other, and the subscriber's like, hey, do you feel prepared for this? And someone's like, well, this is all kind of review stuff, but I have no idea what to expect. When you get into a class, the first test is always a pretty good gauge of how difficult the teacher will be, even though sometimes teachers get easier throughout the semester just because they want to make sure people, don't, coast into the midterm, right? Anyway, so they're waiting there, and it's 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then the class is supposed to be starting. And they're looking at the door, and, Miss Davenport's not there. They normally would expect a teacher to get there kind of a little bit before, especially if there's a test. Miss Davenport was always on time or a minute late. She was one of the last people to enter the classroom normally, which isn't good looks for a teacher, but whatever. But they kind of just assumed on a test day that, she would at least take things a bit more serious and, show up 10 minutes, 15 minutes early to make sure all the copies have been printed out. And, a couple minutes go by, it's 3 minutes past, and people are starting to look at each other hey, we only have 45 minutes for this test. Do you think she's not coming? 5 minutes have passed, and people are like, dude, she might not be coming. And then on the 9th minute, Miss Davenport comes through the door and has a bunch of tests in her hand. And she's like, all right, guys, test time. And they're just looking at each other like, hey, yo, we only have 45 minutes and you've already lost 10 minutes. We only have 35 minutes left. She starts handing out copies of the test. And everyone's like, one person eventually spoke up and said, not to be disrespectful or anything, but can we maybe take this test another time as it's already pretty far into the class time? She said, no, you'll be fine. And so everyone's like, okay, maybe this test is super easy and she knows that it doesn't matter. And that's why she was late and doesn't think that we should redo it at a different time. No, the material was basically impossible. It even included some stuff that apparently she had not even gone over at that time. And it was stuff for the next unit. And when someone asked about it, she said, oh, you should be able to figure this out. And so no one was able to figure it out, and having a little less than 25% less time than they were told that they would have really didn't help, but the test was already pretty impossible by itself. So, they went home that weekend, and on Sunday they checked Canvas, and most everyone failed that test. And on Canvas, the app that a lot of people use, you can actually see what the average is for a lot of tests. The average was a 50. And, Miss Davenport sent out an email saying, I'm satisfied with how the first set of tests went. There will be no curve. And everyone's like, you're satisfied? So that was the first test of the year. So they already knew that this was not going to be a fun class. So a couple weeks in, they have a quiz. And a quiz isn't as big of a deal of a test, but quizzes add up, right? So the subscriber, he does the quiz, he hands it in, and Miss Davenport says, oh, you didn't put your name on it. He says, oh, my fault. Let me just put my name on it. And she says, nope, you already handed it in. And the guy's like, I'm right here. You caught it, right? I just handed in a second ago. I can easily put my name on it. Subscriber was a little bit worried because of the way that she was like, you didn't put your name on it. And then she was ominously it's too late now. you can't put your name on it now, where he literally could have just like gotten the paper handed back. He even had his pencil in his hand when he was walking up, so he could have easily just like scribbled in his name. And yeah, he checked Canvas like in a couple days and he got a 0. He didn't even fail it. He got a 0 because he didn't put his name on the test. He got a 0. So he's not doing well in this class, but he's pretty unhappy with how it's being taught. And she's also just not very nice or friendly at all, and also a bad teacher. It's just a mess, a complete mess. The entire class is a complete mess. So he starts asking around, like this is about a month in, he starts asking around to other people, like, how was your experience in this class? And they're telling him similar, like, horror stories. Like, everyone kind of knew about the tests that were brutal and the fact she was late, but, like, no one really knew, like, who was, like, getting, like, individually screwed over by this teacher. For example, people were shocked to hear that he handed in the story I just told you about the quiz with no name and how he got a 0, even though he said, I'll happily put my name on it. And there were other kind of stories similar to that, but I don't want to have this story go on too much of a tangent as it gets pretty juicy pretty soon, and I don't want to, like, lead away from that. All you need to know, she's been doing similar stuff to other people, and the class overall was starting to feel like she was screwing them over on purpose, and they weren't so happy about it. Pause. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. All right, back to the story. Anyways, right, so the subscriber and a couple people he's talking to in the class, they decide that, like, okay, let's actually get, like, a group chat together where we can, like, discuss and see if everyone else is on the same page here, because the subscriber was so caught off guard that other stuff had been happening to other people as well. He thought she just like didn't like him specifically and was overall mean. But no, she'd been individually screwing over other people. And apparently some of the other things were worse, but I wasn't even like told what they were. But anyways, right, so they decided to get a group chat together. And that night, you know, they add basically everyone to the class. They don't add a few people because there's some people that are, I don't want to say suspicious, but some people that seem to like always be answering in the front of the class, and that's good. I actually encourage that. But the subscriber basically said they added almost everyone, but they didn't want someone to snitch on it, so they didn't add a few people. But they actually ended up adding them later because they talked to them later and they were on the same page as well. They were just try-harding really hard because the class was really hard and everyone was practically failing. So they get this whole group chat together and everyone is just coming out with horror stories about this teacher, things that are just like somehow twice as bad or 3 times as bad as what happened to this guy individually. And, you know, for not writing your name on a piece of, on your quiz and like getting a 0 for that, even when you could have easily done it, that's pretty bad. But there are things like 2-3 times as bad apparently. And the whole class came together saying basically like, this can't continue. So the following, I'm going to say I do not condone. I do not condone spying on anyone, sneaking around, or anything like that. But it's a very interesting story, and it gets pretty exciting and dramatic and all that. So I thought I'd tell it on the channel. Just wanted to give that little tiny disclaimer before I move on. So someone in the group had been saying something about how he found, like, he saw the principal and this new teacher, you know, hanging out a lot, and said that, like, the principal and Miss Davenport are suspiciously close with each other. If you don't know, like, unless like someone comes in already married, you're not allowed to like date within, like, a supervisor cannot date some kind of subordinate because, you know, the principal apparently like has influence on, I don't know, like the salaries of the teacher. And unless they like disclose that or they come in married already, like that's a pretty big no-no. So then someone in the class was like, okay, well, there's a decent shot that, you know, they're just, you know, friends. But on the slight occasion that they happen to be more than friends and we can catch them, like Miss Davenport will just no longer be teaching the class. And honestly, like if I'm going to slip in here for a second, it would be better to go to Miss Davenport directly with your concerns instead of trying to get her fired. But once again, disclaimer out of the way, I'm just telling the story. Don't come after the messenger. This is just for entertainment purposes. But anyways, so what they decide to do is they decide to delegate a few people in the group as kind of spies to kind of snoop around and see if they can catch Miss Davenport and the teacher doing anything they shouldn't be doing. Today's secret word of the day is spy. So if you made it this far into the video, I want you to go down the comment section and comment spy down below. I'll try and heart as many as I can, but, you know, there's just been so many comments, which I do appreciate, but it just means I can't heart all of them. But comment spy and you'll probably get a heart and maybe you'll get top commenter or whatever. Anyways, back to the story. So the subscriber and a few of his other classmates, they kind of agreed to be the spies, including the one that said that he had the initial suspicion. So it was the subscriber and 3 other people were, you know, delegated to, you know, kind of just keep an extra eye, like just kind of like not even keep an extra eye, but honestly go on reconnaissance missions to try and find it's just to try and prove that they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. I don't even want to underplay it. It was like a super spy operation. Anyway, so the subscriber and the three other people, it's a Friday, and they decide to just, wait around after school. Wait around after school to see, where the principal and or Miss Davenport end up going. And obviously, right, they have some boundaries. They're not going to go back to their, places of residence. I mean, spying on people in general and sneaking around, like, that's not good. I do not endorse that. But once again, I'm just telling the story. Anyways, but they do have some limitations. They're not going to go to their place of residence. They're not going to, like, intentionally, like, stalk them too hard. I don't know what that means. But anyways, right, they see Miss Davenport, and she is walking down the street. And, like, about a 5-minute walk away is this kind of, like, part of the town that they're near that has a lot of shops and, like, food places. So if she's just going down there, they're going to follow along just like a little bit behind. Anyways, so, they start walking down the street, and Miss Davenport is very, very clearly going to this kind of like section of town where all the food shops are. And they decide to, they go and kind of follow her down there. And they notice that she goes to this really popular cafe. So she walks in there, and unfortunately, right, the windows, they aren't tinted, but it's like at the right time of day, and the windows are cloudy enough that they can't really see clearly in there. But they know that she went in there. So they kind of like looked at each other, and they're like, we need one of you guys to go in there and kind of see like what she's doing, right? We want to know if she's like actually like, if she's meeting up with the principal or not. And if she isn't, then maybe this was all for nothing. But there's a chance she is. And if our suspicion is right, then, like, I don't know, we could have an actual normal year in math, potentially. So, they look around at each other. No one really wants to do it. But the subscriber pipes up and says, you know what? I'll do it. So would like a little bit of video proof so that people will actually believe him and that they might, begin to build a case in a sense. So what he does is he turns on his phone camera. And while it's very obvious if you're like recording someone, what he did was he just had it on like the whole time. So he didn't like turn it on and start recording. So he would kind of naturally walk in there, look like he's checking his phone. And then if he wanted to get a really clear video of them, he would make it look like he was taking a snap to someone. So it almost looked like he was like moving his phone up to like take a Snapchat photo in their direction. But then he would continue doing it and make it look like he was just passing time, right? So he went into the coffee shop. So he goes in the coffee shop, and at first he can't really find Miss Davenport. So he's kind of just like looking around a little bit. And then, he decides, okay, I'm just going to sit down. I'm just going to try and like check things out. So he sits down at one of the window seats, and he's looking out, and he's just kind of waiting. He's like, did she just stop in here quickly? Did she like exit out the back or something? And as he's about to like get up and leave and be like, guys, this was like a dead end. Like there was like, it's whatever, it's over, right? He kind of feels like he wants to like, stop by the bathroom. I don't know, he had to go pee or something. And he's walking down to the bathroom, and he still has his phone out, and his phone is still recording. And as he's walking to the bathroom, he sees in the very seat at the very, very back, Miss Davenport. And who else would it be sitting with her but, yes, the principal. So anyways, he kind of like perks up, and he looks down at his phone, and he does get it. He catches it on camera. He's like, okay. And he rushes over to the bathroom, slips in there really quickly, and is just like chilling on his phone for a second. And he stops the recording. He looks at it, and yes, he gets them. He gets them on camera. It's not the greatest recording of all time, but it's good enough to like prove to his friends that, yeah, they were there. So he kind of like collects his stuff, puts his phone away, opens the bathroom door, and since like the table was far enough in the corner that like he could open the door enough to kind of like cover his identity, and he kind of just like quickly power walked out of there, out of the cafe to his friends. He explained what happened, showed them the video, and then that night they went on the group chat. He told everyone what happened. He sent the video, and everyone's like, okay, that's really suspicious. Like and the dude was like, I told you guys, right? And then one person kind of like piped up and said, hey, like, we cannot go to them with a case if this is the only thing we have, because this can be explained away. And everyone's like, but dude, it's so suspicious. It's so weird. And the guy's like, I know, but they could just be friends. They could be talking about work. And even if they're not, even if they actually are up to something, if we just go to them with this, they'll explain it away. We'll get in more trouble. She'll probably be worse to us in class. And then afterwards, they'll be much more careful, and we'll never be able to form another case again. And then someone's like, okay, you kind of got a point. So the subscriber and the three other kind of like spies or messengers or, whatever we want to call them, right, say, you know what, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going with the case. So the subscriber and the three other people who were like the spies were a little like not totally sure what they were going to do next. So someone just suggested to them saying, how about you just kind of like camp out the classroom and just see if like either of them go in there and like, or leave from it. Like just camp outside the classroom for the next like week or so and be like, careful about it. You don't want to get caught or anything, but that's kind of like our only chance. Subscriber and the other guys that were doing the thing with them, right? After class, after school, I should say, right as like her last class ends, they kind of camp outside her classroom and they kind of like, there's like behind the hall, there's like another classroom that's kind of like empty and open. So what they do is they camp out there and they have their laptops and they're pretending to do work, but they also have a very clear view of the classroom without having the classroom, anyone like walking into it, having a clear view of them. So the first day of camping out, they look out there, nothing's really happening for like an hour. And then eventually, the teacher leaves, right? Miss Davenport just leaves and nothing happens. And they're kind of bummed out because they're like, we camped all this time for nothing. And the subscriber's like, all right, we're coming back tomorrow. And the other guys were like, dude, this might just be nothing. And he's like, okay, well, we'll do this for a week. And if it doesn't pay off after a week, then the case is just closed and we're just going to have to fail this math class. Again, I'm going to step in here for a second. Guys, if you have problems with your teachers, don't do this. Talk to them, but whatever. This is an interesting story. Anyways, they come back the next day and they're sitting there and they're sitting there again. And the other guys are like, dude, this is going to be the same thing as it was yesterday. She's going to like grade stuff in our classroom and then leave. And it's going to be a total waste of time. And the subscriber's like, we just got to hold out. We got to do this. We said we'd do it. We're going to do it. And it was like 45 minutes in. And one of the guys was like, okay, I'm going to leave in 10. Like, I'm very bored. And as he said that, he sees who else, right? Who else would it be? The principal walks into that classroom and shuts the door. And they're like, oh my God, what do we do? Like, what are we going to do? Can't necessarily walk in right away because they won't catch them doing anything right away, but they also don't want to wait too long. So what they decide is someone who, not the subscriber, one of the other guys decides to quickly walk by the classroom in about 2 minutes, right? He waits 2 minutes and then he quickly walks by the classroom. And then once he walks by, he's going to give them either a thumbs up, which means go in there recording, right? That this is the big sting operation, or a thumbs down, it's not worth it. So the guy walks by the classroom, he looks into the door briefly and like sprints by. Like once he's done, he just sprints by. He turns around with this face of shock and like a little bit of a smile and has 2 big thumbs up. And the subscriber like is feeling super nervous to do this, but what he does, he turns on his camera, he does it in kind of like an incognito way, so it's not super obvious he's recording, and the other 2 people who are in the class as well go up to the door and just open it. It's not locked, which is a big mistake on their part. And what do they see? They see Miss Davenport and the principal doing some things they should not be doing. And their cover was they were coming in to like ask, Miss Davenport for like help on the math or whatever. And, Miss Davenport just looks at them. And the principal just looks at them. And they're like, oh, can we have help on math? Oh. And they're like, oh, so sorry. We should have knocked. Like, bye. And they just run out of there. They just run out of there and they run to like down the hall and they go around and then they exit the school. They're all panting. They're like, did you get that on camera? Did you get that on camera? And the subscriber's like, I don't know. And they check the camera. They look through the feed. It's a little shaky, but there we go. A very clear image/video of exactly what they needed. So they quickly sent, the video and the whole story to the group chat. And within like a day, they sent a report in because that was like a Friday or something. So, they had the weekend to send in the report. And by the time everyone came into class on Monday, there was kind of no teacher right away, which they assumed Ms. Davenport was just late again. But then a substitute came in and they said, hey, I'm going to be filling in for your teacher for the week. After that week was over, Miss Davenport, believe it or not, did not come back. And it was a new math teacher. And she came in, she said, hey, I'm Miss, whatever, right? I'm going to be your new math teacher. Help me out, get me caught up where you guys were left off. And I think we're going to have a great year together.